Hey, Teague here. We're gonna do a little Spanish finger picking with a tune called Leyenda. So I'm just going to get my page set up here, and I'm going to copy a link for you into the description so that you can play along. Let me put the link in here right now. So basically, here's the link. All right, so that will let us play along. Let me just shrink this window a little tiny bit. There we go. We're good. Fastest setup yet. Maybe, maybe not. Okay, so here we go. We're going to jump right in. Let's see if we can light this fretboard up a little better so it's easier to see. So if you grab that link for the page, here's where we're going to start. This piece is a bit tricky to play full speed, but it's also kind of easy. So there's two. So even if you've not played much, you'll be able to jump along here or play along. Let me make sure I have the page open, and I do. Okay. So if you're on that page, we're going to start with something very, very simple: thumb and index. We're going to play the thumb on the low E. Don't worry about reading music. So you'll notice on that page there is a staff, and you might see the notes, and you might be like, oh, there's no tab. How am I going to read this? It's okay. All that is a low E. The P underneath the low E is representing your thumb. And then there's a high E, which is the higher note above that low note. And it has an I underneath it for index. So all we're basically going to do is go thumb, index, thumb, index. Very, very easy, right? Now, those are written as 16th notes on the page. Again, we're not overly concerned what that means. We're mostly just worried about trying to go thumb to index. Okay, pretty easy. Now, underneath that, once you've done that for a little bit and feel pretty good, you'll notice the next one is thumb and middle. So we're basically going to do the exact same exercise. Low E to high E, going from your thumb to this time, your middle finger. And we're going to work at speeding that up. You can work on the thumb index, speeding that up. And then the next exercise down the page is we're now going to alternate between the thumb and index and thumb and middle. So we're going to go thumb, index, thumb, middle, thumb, index, thumb, middle. Now, as we get into the whole piece, you can play the whole piece with just thumb and index or just thumb and middle, but this would be a better option if you can go back and forth. Mike! You know what, Mike? I still have to call you today. How are you? How are things going? I can't believe you're in here. That's so amazing. Do you have your guitar handy? You want to learn a cool piece? It's kind of cool. But I do have to call you because we do have to talk big time. Miss you. Hope all is I hope all is well. I'm going to continue, though, for the moment. Just you're doing great. You're at work. Yay! So I'm guessing that's a good sign, right? So cool. Let's see. When can we talk? Can we talk sometime today? Because I'd like to talk today if we can. Tell me a good time for you, and then I'll call. I have to go get Jonah from school in 2 hours. Like to maybe get a haircut. Cancer-free. Wait a second, you've already been cancer-free for 1 year? No, it hasn't been that long since we've spoke, has it? But that's awesome, Mike. That is like the best news ever. So, yay. Yeah, I've been thinking about you a lot. That's awesome. Oh, so you're at work, you can't learn this piece. Probably dig it though. To anybody just joining us, Mike just popped into the chat. We're friends a long time. Anytime after 5. Okay. So anytime after 2 here. Yeah, okay, perfect. Maybe I'll give you a call on the way to get Jonah. Or maybe I'll wait till after. Okay, so for anybody that's just joining to keep things rolling here, we're going to work on a Spanish tune called Leyenda. It's not played very well, but we'll clean it up as we go. So what we've been doing is to get this fingering down as we just started with the low E. There's a link here in the chat for anybody just joining. Grab the link. It has all the material to go with this. We started with the thumb on the low E, index on the high E. Don't worry about reading music. It's pretty easy. Do you recognize that one, Mike? So we're practicing going thumb and index. Then we also practiced on the second exercise on the page, thumb to middle. And then the third exercise, we're going thumb, index, thumb, middle. Okay, Mike, awesome. I'm going to call you today. So now we're going thumb, index, thumb, middle, thumb, index, thumb, middle. All right, so let's keep moving. Let's jump down to the next part of the page after we've done that. So we're going to add some movement. So anybody that has been in the last couple streams knows we've been spending a bunch of time trying to learn the fretboard. And we've been doing that by learning the natural notes, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and how they relate to the fretboard. So E on the first fret. Ronnie, you made it! Yay! We're doing a little Spanish guitar, Ronnie. You have your guitar in hand. This is a fun one. So there's a page, a link here. Maybe I'll just post it in again so it doesn't get too buried into the chat. There it is again. And then let me come back. So we did thumb, index, thumb, middle on their 2 low E's. Then we did an alternating between thumb, index, thumb, middle. And now our next exercise down the page is we're just going to add some notes on this low E to move it around. So on the exercise that I'm showing, I'm just playing A on the 5th fret, then the high E. I'm going to B on the 7th fret, high E again. And again, you can just use thumb and index if you want. In fact, I might recommend just using thumb and index for a moment. And then I'm going to go C on the 8th fret and that high E again. So I'm going. You could play it all with one finger if you wanted. I just did that over the top so we can see it. But and then I'm coming back to that B on the 7th. So that's just thumb and index. I could do thumb and middle. Or I can work on the exercise where we're heading, which is going thumb, index, then thumb, middle, thumb, index, thumb, middle. So if we tie that into the exercises from the last bunch of live streams, we would basically be taking all of the notes in the key of C on this low E string. So I had my A on the 5th fret, B on the 7th, C on the 8th, D on the 10th, and then high E on the 12th. So I can take the same exercise. G on the 3rd fret, F on the 1st fret, open E. And if we tie that into some of the past live streams where we would use some of our major scale information, like the understanding how to build a major scale, whole step, half step, whole step, half step. Again, if you're joining us and you're like, I don't know what any of that means, you can click the link and follow through to learn that stuff. But then we could use a major scale. So if I'm doing an E major scale, I'm going E, open E, F sharp on the 2nd, G sharp on the 4th, A on the 5th, B on the 7th, C sharp on the 9th, D sharp on the 11th, and back to E. And then so I'm learning the fretboard, but I'm working on this thumb, index, thumb, middle. So I'm just using the open E to go back and forth. So I'm kind of working on two things at the same time. I'm learning my fretboard, more than two things. Also training my ear to whatever the sound of that scale might be. We said if we're playing from E to E using the natural notes, just A, B, C, D, E, F, G, we hear a Phrygian sound. If we use the whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step, we have that major scale sound. And then we're working on this finger pattern. So there's a whole bunch of things happening with one exercise. And I'm a big fan of combining exercises into one idea, because that way, so for example, you don't get too bored. Because for example, if you were just going thumb, index, you know, like how long can you practice that before you're kind of losing your mind, right? So if we connect that to an exercise that has learning our fretboard, A, back to G, 3rd fret, C on the 8th fret, B on the 7th fret, back to open E. So if I say my letter name, so I'm learning my fretboard, I'm training my ear to hear the Phrygian sound or the major sound, depending on what scale you decide. And I'm still Logic. How are you? I'm glad you made it in. And you also are working on this thumb index or thumb index, thumb middle, whichever. That you have to decide for yourself what level of the exercise, you know, how crazy you want it to be. Stefanich, how are you? Glad to see you in here too. So hopefully everybody's still with me thus far, right? We're working our way to learning Leyenda, the main theme, which is this. Some tricks to that as we get into that whole thing with not having those, like if you notice there, I'd have to listen back to the recording, but in hearing what I'm hearing, my E's are too loud and my main line is too quiet. So I'll show you some tricks to working on that too. But yeah, so again, anybody joining us, follow the link. The link has everything that we're talking about on that page. We started thumb index, thumb middle on these two open E's, just alternating between. Then thumb index, thumb middle, thumb index, thumb middle. And then the exercise that is called Let's Add Some Movement. It's about halfway down the page. That's where we went A, B, C, B. So 5, 7, 8, 7 with open E in between. And you can either use just your thumb index or the alternate exercise. And then you can expand that to work on, like we've done in the past streams, like the Phrygian sound. All the notes just in the key of C. Or E major, building the E major scale. So again, we're just talking about exercises, combining different exercises to make practicing a lot of fun with a bigger goal in mind of learning a piece, right? But sometimes if we jump into a piece that has some technique in it that we're not very comfortable or used to, the piece can become very frustrating very quick. So the trick here is we're breaking it into these little pieces that we can work on that are going to make, when we get to the real tune, much easier. So let's jump into the piece itself. So now anybody following along the link that I've posted here, we're now to the main theme. So now we're jumping into this piece called Leyenda. Albanese was the composer. Albanese? I'm not totally sure how to say it. Isaac? No, I forget. I should know, and I should have it on the page. I'll add it to the page so we know the composer of this wonderful piece. And so, okay, let's go. So when we get to the main theme, here's what we're doing. Again, don't worry about reading music. I'm not a big fan of tab because, you know, if I want to play the 7th fret of my 4th string, I want to know that is an A, not a 7 on the 4th string. That doesn't help me really become a better player. It doesn't help me understand music. There's only 12 tones in music. We only have to make sense of 7 alphabet letters and then 5 sharps or flats, the accidentals. So I don't know. I don't believe that you necessarily have to learn to read music to become a great player. That's certainly not true. There's lots of great players who don't read music. Nor do you have to understand music theory to become a great player. But for me, I like to understand the note names and the sounds and how they relate. It lets me continually grow as a player. Anyway, so here's the main theme. So even without reading music, it's pretty self-explanatory on the page here. You'll see it says it's in 3/4, so that means we're just going to count to 3 every measure. Don't concern ourselves too much with that just yet. We'll get more into that. But we're basically just going to go from this A. There's a fretboard graph right beside the notation, the staff. And then we're going to jump to E on the 9th fret of your 3rd string. So it actually looks like a power chord. A to E. I'm going to use my index and then my 3rd finger. Then we're going to go to F with the pinky on the 10th fret of that 3rd string. So we had A, E, F. That's the first 3 notes. There's only 6 notes, so we're halfway there. A, E, F. By the way, we're going to play this all with the thumb, and we'll talk about why in a minute, but this is all going to be the thumb. Then we're going to come back to D, same string still, but the 7th fret. So we had the A, the 7th fret of the 4th string, but then E, 9th of the 3rd string, F, 8th of the 3rd string, D, 7th of the 3rd string. So E, F, D are all on the 3rd string. Then we're going to come back to the E with the 3rd finger, so still on the 3rd string. So last note of this pattern is C, the 10th fret of your 4th string, the string you started on. And then back to that starting A. And we're going to repeat this. It's actually going to repeat for 3 measures. So 3 times. And then we're going to have a little variation on the 4th measure, which we'll talk about later. But not this stream, I think. I think what I'm going to let us do for this stream is we're going to get a grip on this main theme and how to play it and how to practice it. And then that way, when we get to the next live stream and we add, the piece will just become much, much easier to play when we kind of already have things flowing in how we're going to practice it. Okay, so A, E, F, D, E, C. Six notes. Because we're in 3/4, would really count it as 1 and 2 and 3 and. But you could count the 6 if you wanted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1. That's our main theme. Pretty easy, right? So we want to play that over and over, get that in our head. Now the real fun begins. Why we did everything prior to the theme. So after the main theme, you're going to go to the last thing on the page, which says 16th Notes with open E, and notice there's not even any writing to go along with this, but that's okay. We'll explain it. So here's what's basically happening. We are going to put an open E between every note in this theme. So you basically are going to play a note, the first note, you're going to play an open E. You're going to play the second note, an open E. The third note, an open E. Fourth note, open E. So essentially, we're putting an E in between each note. Now notice what I've done just where it says 16th notes with an open E. It shows the E, then it shows another E, but the circle above that E means open. Then you'll see the E beside it does not have a circle, even though it's the exact same note. So it's the same pitch. Yeah, we would sing these as the same note. It's not low E, it's not a lower E. This E here is the same as open E. So you might think, well, wait, they sound pretty different when I play them on my guitar. That's called timbre. That's tonal color. It's like the difference between a flute and a saxophone playing the same note. You know, they're playing the same pitch, but you can totally tell one is a flute and one is a saxophone, right? Or a human voice singing a note and a saxophone or whatever. They can be, the human voice can sing the same note as the saxophone, but you're like, oh, well, I can tell that's a human voice and I can tell that's a saxophone. Even though it's the same pitch. That's called timbre, tonal color. The characteristics that make up the sound. So these E's are the same E, pitch-wise, but timbre-wise, they're quite different sounding because we have this much thinner string here, the first string, and then this ninth fret, on the third string, it's a much thicker string and gives us a much different sound, but they're the same E. And then you'll notice the open E again as the fourth note. So basically we're going A to the open E, then that fretted E, even though it's the same pitch, then the open E again. And underneath that staff, I show how we would go the thumb, index on the open E, thumb on the fretted E, because remember the thumb's going to play all the fretted notes, then the open E again, but this time middle. Now that's if we want to get like playing it where we're going thumb, index, thumb, middle, which is kind of ideally where we're heading. But if that's too tricky, you can play this all thumb, middle, thumb, or thumb, index, or thumb, middle, thumb, middle. Bear Logic is asking if Andrea Segovia played this, but he probably did it at some point, I would have to imagine. Does the first part sound a little bit like Sweet Child of Mine? Well, it has a couple characteristics as far as like the half steps between there's a couple little characteristics. You know, so in a way, I guess we could say that it kind of might. Okay, so let's see. So now we're basically now practicing going from the A, open E, to the fretted E, to open E again. So if you find going thumb, index, thumb, middle is too tricky, then come back and practice that with just the open E's. Or one of those exercises we talked about where you use the notes on a string. Until that becomes more comfortable. So when you go to put Leyenda together, if you find, okay, this is pretty tricky just getting the open E in there, you might want to just go thumb index the whole time. And like I said, we probably want to focus on this. Get that main theme under your fingers. And then once that's there, you can start alternating between your thumb and index. I kind of leave my first finger on that starting A until I need it on the D. But that's up to you how you want to try to do that. Yeah, so that's the main idea behind this piece. So it's a little bit tricky to put it all together, but in another way, it's not that bad, and it sounds really cool fast. So now I want to do one more thing before we kind of wrap this up. We talked a minute ago about wanting this to maybe be louder than these open E's. These open E's can kind of start becoming this drone tone that gets kind of almost annoying if they're too loud. And it is hard to control. Even I'm playing it right now, I find I'm playing those low open E's too loud. So what we have to practice there is really slowing it down and try to practice picking with the thumb quite loud and then really plucking that high E string very quietly. You could exaggerate it, like really play the thumb loud, and and then play the pinky really quiet, or the index, sorry, really. It's tricky, but that's one way, and then eventually it works out. Then as it kind of starts to come together, you just have to focus on that thumb plucking a little harder to get the main theme being heard, and trying to get the index in the middle on that high E playing very softly. But that's definitely a trick, and takes a lot of time to get the hang of that, where that sounds really good. And yeah, that's about it. I hope everybody kind of had fun with that. We're going to expand on it big time, and we're going to learn all the other parts. There's other parts of the tune for sure, or the piece of music. I used to have a professor in university, whenever I would call a Bach or Mozart or a tune, or he would always say, we would laugh and always say it's a piece of music. We don't call that a tune. So there's the puppy barking. She's pretty quiet though. I did get her a bone today. I made the mistake of leaving the downstairs door open, so she was able to take her bone and get out into the yard. And of course, then I can't get the bone back from her because she's running around the yard with the bone anyway. So, but it's okay. I wanted to end the stream at 1:30. It's just about 1:30. The dog is barking, so I can go stop her from barking. And lots of information for you guys all to work on. And then we'll start learning. Bear Logic is asking, is there's a difference between nylon and cool string guitar? I'm not sure what you mean by cool string guitar, but nylon we would normally hear a classical piece like this played on. I'm just playing it on a steel string. I do have a nylon string, but this is actually in need of strings, but the nylon guitar is in need of strings even more. Eric, how are you? Yeah, the nylon string is in need of new strings even more, so that's why I'm not using it. But I would have loved to have done this lesson on the nylon string. And who knows, if I get nylon strings on it, maybe I will do part 2 on the nylon string. We'll see. But yeah, so I don't know, not totally sure, Bear Logic, exactly what you mean there, but yeah, nylon strings, of course, are not made of nylon, and then the steel strings are what you hear here, what we hear on electric guitars and acoustic guitars. What we might call a classical guitar or a Spanish guitar typically have nylon strings, and the neck is a little wider typically. And oh yeah, no, don't be. Oh, real. Oh, metal. Yeah. So yeah, okay. So it's kind of what I thought you meant, Bear Logic. Yeah. So yeah, so nylon strings are nylon and have a much different sound. Let me just well, I'm gonna stop the stream here in a minute. The dog, she won't. I have to go out there to get her to stop barking, really. And for those who didn't know from the last 2 streams, I now have a dog that I never had before, and she's still a puppy, but she's learning. But she's also found her voice and now protecting the property, so she makes a lot of noise and doesn't like to stop sometimes. Yeah, so electric guitars and what we typically call acoustic guitars have steel strings, and Spanish guitars or classical guitars typically have nylon strings and a little wider neck. Yeah, and a very different sound. Both, obviously, I love both. Both good for what they are. How are you, Eric? It's good. I'm glad you made it in, even if it's only just for the very end. I do have to go stop the dog from barking before she drives the neighbors crazy. But any cover videos? I kind of was, and I got away from it, but I would like to get back at it. I would like to start doing some covers again. So it's just, yeah, I'm just kind of working my way back into the streaming again. I kind of got away from it for a little bit. And I really, one of these days, I'm going to get some proper lights, which will be really good, so I don't look like I'm sitting in the dark in the middle of a sunny afternoon. You can't even tell because the way the sun is above the house at the moment. Yeah, but yeah, my plan is to definitely do some covers again. And hopefully I answered your question there, Bear Logic. And yeah, so again, I'll throw the link up there one more time just in case anybody has just joined us and wonders what we're talking about. Yeah, if you have any interest, Eric, in learning this piece, then you can watch this video. And I'm going to try to condense these. I try to plow right into the content this live stream because I realize sometimes when I don't, it really makes for kind of a painful rewatch for anybody rewatching the material. So I jump right in. I don't waste any time getting right into the material that's on the page. And then, yeah, and then we're going to continue this. I'm actually going to have to miss next week, but I'll be back the following week where we'll continue this piece. So it'll give you 2 weeks to work on this, and you can get the speed up. And when you kind of get the hang of this, the rest of the piece is actually going to come very easy. So it doesn't really get any harder than what we've done. It's just some different parts. But that's basically the piece. And yeah, so I want to say thanks for everybody for coming in and joining again. It's awesome. Yeah, that's it. The material that link will stay up. As far as I know, I'm still working out exactly how. Anyway, I think that link will be the link to the page. I think it will stay. Still some things to work through. Yeah, so again, I'll just play us out here, but I'll see you not next week, but in 2 weeks. So you can set the reminder once I set the stream for 2 weeks from now, which I'll try to do here as soon as this one ends. Set yourself a reminder so you'll know. And yeah, I'll see you in 2 weeks and we'll add to this. Can't remember quite how it connects into that next part. I don't have the music in front of me, but that's okay. We'll work that out on the next one. All right, everybody, thanks so much for being in here and joining me. And yeah, we'll see you in a couple weeks where we'll continue on this this great Spanish guitar piece. Okay, thanks everyone. See you in 2 weeks. Very welcome, Bear Logic. Oh, and thanks, Eric. Excellent. Stefan, thank you so much for the questions. It was really good, too. And yeah, hopefully I'll get a new cover here soon, too. All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you soon.